There you are, little one, all wrapped up and ready for a tale, just as the rain starts its quiet tapping on the roof. That's good. Get comfortable now, and let Grandpa tuck you in with a story that's been resting on the tip of my tongue, just waiting for the right night to be told. This one is about a boy named Emery, a town called Maplemere, and a very peculiar compass with a mind of its own. You see, in the quiet little village of Maplemere, tucked between golden wheat fields and whispering pine forests, there stood an old stone cottage with ivy climbing its sides and wooden shutters that always creaked in the wind. In that cottage, young Emery lived with his grandmother, who wore thick glasses and made the fluffiest blueberry muffins you could ever imagine. One stormy afternoon, when thunder grumbled low and the attic smelled of dust and lavender, Emery was helping his grandmother search for an old quilt. But as he rummaged through a stack of wooden boxes, his hand brushed something cold and smooth. He pulled out a small brass compass. Its glass face was foggy, and the needle spun in slow, lazy circles, never settling. But the strange thing was, it pulsed, gently, like a heartbeat. His grandmother looked over and gasped softly, "Oh my, where did you find that?" "In this box," Emery said. "What is it?" She took a deep breath. "That is the compass of Witherwind. It doesn't point north, dear. It points to what you need most." Emery blinked. "What I need most?" She nodded. "And once it starts pointing, you best be ready for an adventure." And just like that, the needle stopped spinning. It pointed toward the attic window, glowing faintly in the dusky light. And that, little one, is where our story begins. Let your eyes grow heavy now. There are 15 more parts to this adventure, and you'll need all your dreams to travel through them. The next morning, Emery woke before the sun, the compass still clutched tightly in his hand. It throbbed with a gentle warmth, the needle now firmly fixed on the old garden gate behind the cottage. With his grandmother's blessing, and a satchel packed with sandwiches, and a thermos of warm apple cider, Emery stepped outside into the morning mist. The dew sparkled on the leaves like tiny stars, and a hush lay over the land. The garden gate creaked open with a sigh, as though it too had been waiting for this moment. Beyond it lay a narrow path, half swallowed by ferns and dandelions leading into the woods. The compass pulsed more brightly with every step. Birds chirped sleepily in the trees, and somewhere in the distance a brook murmured over stones. As he followed the path, Emery noticed carvings in the trees, strange runes and symbols he didn't understand. And then just before noon, he reached a small clearing where an ancient wooden sign stood. "Welcome to the Forest of Whispers," it read. The compass quivered. Emery stepped forward, deeper into the forest. The sunlight filtered through the leaves in golden ribbons, and the air was thick with the scent of moss and wildflowers. The compass pointed to a large tree, its bark gnarled and twisted with age. Emery approached cautiously. To his surprise, the tree groaned and opened one sleepy eye. "Well now," it said in a deep, slow voice, "you've brought the compass of Witherwind?" "You can talk?" Emery stammered. "Of course I can. Been doing it for centuries," the tree chuckled. "You're on a quest, aren't you?" "I think so," said Emery. The tree hummed thoughtfully. "Then you'll need a story seed. Look under my roots." Emery knelt and found a small, glowing acorn nestled in the dirt. As he touched it, he saw a flash. an image of a tall lighthouse standing in the clouds. "Plant that in your pocket," the tree said. "It'll grow when the time is right." And with that, the tree closed its eye and went back to dreaming. Emery pressed on, the forest whispering behind him. As the sun dipped low, Emery reached the edge of a small pond, its surface so still it looked like a mirror. Perched on a branch above was a glass owl, shimmering with the colors of the setting sun. The owl blinked slowly. "You seek the feathered sky." "What's that?" Emery asked. The owl didn't answer, but dropped a feather made of crystal into Emery's hand. "Follow the moon. When the clouds part, climb." The compass pointed east, and the feather hummed softly with magic. That night, Emery camped beneath a starry sky, and as the moon rose high, the clouds above parted to reveal a floating staircase made of silver wind. Gripping the compass and the crystal feather, Emery began to climb. Up, up into the clouds he went, until the stars seemed close enough to touch. And there, nestled in a bed of mist, was the feathered sky. A city made entirely of floating feathers and moonlight. Soft-winged beings greeted him with gentle nods, guiding him to the Hall of Dreams. There, the compass glowed fiercely, pointing to a mirror. Emery looked inside and saw not his reflection, but a vision of his deepest wish, to understand where he truly belonged. A single tear rolled down his cheek. The beings smiled. "The compass shows you more than direction," one whispered. "It shows you truth." The mirror shimmered, and when Emery blinked, he was no longer in the feathered sky. He stood on a spiral staircase, climbing the tallest lighthouse he had ever seen. Wind howled through broken shutters, and each step echoed with memories. At the top, he found a lamp burning low, guarded by a white fox with eyes like storm clouds. "Why do you seek the light?" the fox asked. "I want to find where I belong," Emery said softly. The fox nodded. "Then carry this flame. It will light the path through shadow." Emery took the flame into a glass jar, the compass pulsing brighter than ever. Descending the lighthouse, Emery arrived at a bridge suspended between cloud and hill. Voices echoed with every step he took, some kind, some sad, his parents' laughter, his own voice calling out into empty rooms. He paused, heart heavy, but the flame in the jar warmed his hands. At the center of the bridge stood a figure cloaked in mist. "To cross, you must forgive yourself." Emery nodded slowly. "I'm doing my best." The bridge shimmered gold beneath his feet, and he stepped forward. The path now led Emery to a mountain of silver rock. No signs marked it. The compass spun wildly. "Sometimes," said a whisper on the wind, "you must climb without knowing." So he did. The ascent was hard, and the air thin. But at the peak, he found a single flower growing in the snow, blue and soft as a sigh. He picked it, and the compass stilled. A voice echoed from the clouds. "The final piece is within." Back in the attic, just as the storm cleared, Emery opened his satchel. Inside were the flame, the crystal feather, the glowing acorn, and the blue flower. As he laid them out, the compass spun one last time, and then cracked open, revealing a locket. Inside was a picture of his parents, smiling beside a much younger version of his grandmother. Tears welled in Emery's eyes. Home wasn't just a place, it was the people who lit your path. That night, Emery placed the locket on the windowsill and the glass jar with the flame beside it. The compass had stopped glowing. It had done its work. His grandmother hugged him tightly. "Did you find what you were looking for?" Emery nodded. "I think I found myself." The rain tapped gently outside, and from the attic window a soft golden glow lit the night. "Sleep now," his grandmother whispered. "The compass always knows where you're meant to be." And so, with dreams warm and whole, Emery drifted off to sleep. Long after the storm had passed, and the lantern in Emery's window burned with a steady glow, he awoke one morning to find the compass quietly humming again. Its needle now pointed down the winding cobblestone lane that led to the edge of Maplemere. Emery packed a small bundle, this time including the locket, the crystal feather, and the blue flower, and followed the new path. Past the bakery with its cinnamon scent. Beyond the sleepy grocer's stall, Emery came to a tiny cottage shaped like a bell tower. A dozen wine chimes danced from every beam, and a soft, rhythmic ringing filled the air. An elderly man, shaped like a bundle of wool and wearing spectacles so thick they made his eyes look enormous, stood at the door. "You've brought the flame," the man said, not needing to ask. "Yes," Emery replied. "Then you must meet the heart bell. It only rings for those whose compass leads from love." Inside, the old bell maker showed Emery a grand bronze bell that glowed faintly from within. "Strike it gently," he said. Emery did, and the bell sang a deep, soothing tone that echoed through the hills and valleys, carrying a part of Emery's heart with it. He felt lighter, as if some worry he hadn't known was there had slipped away. "Now go," the bell maker said with a smile. "Your melody will find you again when you need it." The next evening, led by moonlight and the compass, Emery found himself at the edge of a grove of tall silver birches. Hidden among the trees was a door with no house, just standing upright, flickering with candlelight. When Emery opened it, he stepped into the midnight library. Shelves stretched upward beyond the clouds, filled with books that whispered. Each book, he discovered, held someone's dream, bound in starlight and ink. The librarian, a woman with hair like woven moonbeams, greeted him silently and handed him a book bound in blue velvet. It had no title, but when Emery opened it, he saw scenes from his journey. Every step, every feeling, even the ones he hadn't shared aloud. "How did this get written?" he whispered. She smiled. "You wrote it with every step you took, every truth you faced." Emery sat for a long time, turning the pages, letting the warmth of memory settle into his bones. As he left, the librarian handed him a blank page and a silver pen. "For what comes next," she said. At the base of Maplemere's oldest hill was a lake so still it reflected the sky like a second world. The compass now pulsed gently, drawing Emery to a dock where no boat was moored, only a lantern that blinked 3 times. Suddenly, with a gentle rumble, a shimmering train emerged from beneath the water, golden steam puffing from its stack. He climbed aboard, and the conductor, a tall figure in a coat made of mist, nodded solemnly. "Only those with open hearts may ride." The train glided silently beneath the lake, its windows revealing scenes from other people's dreams. An old woman flying with kites, a child making friends with a dragon, a boy reunited with his lost dog. Emery watched in wonder. Each dream was different, but everyone shimmered with hope. Before the train emerged on the far shore, the conductor handed Emery a tiny ticking watch. For remembering that time as a gift, not a weight. Beyond the lake lay a village Emery had never seen on any map. Every house had a clock tower, each ticking to its own rhythm. The people there moved with a kind of dance, slow, graceful, never hurried. Emery wandered through the square where time itself seemed to breathe. He met the clockmaker, a woman with fingers stained in brass and coal. She wore a crown of gears and moved like music. She took the watch from Emery's hand, listened to it, then wound it gently. "You were running," she said softly. "Now you walk." "What do you mean?" "Sometimes we rush to find ourselves, but the self is not at the end of a race. It's in every tick, every breath." She handed the watch back. It now ticked in time with Emery's heartbeat. At the village's edge was a pool surrounded by willows, so quiet and still that time itself seemed to pause. In the center stood a mirror, not to look into, but to walk through. The compass stopped at its base. Emery hesitated, but then he stepped forward. The moment he did, warm light wrapped around him. He saw visions of himself, laughing, crying, growing, learning. And then, home. He stepped out on the other side, and there was the attic. His grandmother was dusting shelves, humming to herself. The compass, now still and silent, had brought him full circle. That night, as Emery prepared for bed, he placed the compass beside his pillow. The locket lay over his heart. The watch ticked gently in his pocket. The crystal feather and blue flower rested on his windowsill. And the page from the midnight library was tucked under his pillow, slowly filling with words as he dreamed. His grandmother sat beside him, reading softly from his velvet-bound book. Outside, the rain began again, a soft, steady lullaby. "Grandma," Emery whispered, "do you think I'll need the compass again?" She kissed his forehead. "Not to find where you belong, dear, but maybe to remember how far you've come." And so, wrapped in comfort and quiet joy, Emery drifted into sleep, the light from the attic window glowing gently into the night. A few days after the light in the attic window faded and the rain passed on, Emery awoke to a sound he hadn't heard before, a soft, wordless melody drifting through the air like someone humming just beyond the trees. Curious, he slipped on his boots, tucked the ticking watch into his coat, and stepped into the early morning hush. The compass no longer moved, but Emery didn't need it now. His heart had become the guide. He followed the song to a meadow cloaked in dawn mist, where wild flowers swayed like dancers. In the center stood a circle of stones, each one carved with notes and lyrics that shimmered faintly in the light. As Emery stepped into the circle, the melody grew stronger, not from the stones, but from within him. It was a lullaby his parents used to sing, one he had forgotten until now, and as he hummed it aloud, birds joined in. The meadow seemed to hold its breath, listening. A tiny fox pup with a silver stripe along its back padded out from the tall grass and curled beside Emery, its eyes closing as the song wrapped around them both. Sometimes the truest paths aren't walked with maps or magic, but with memory and music. That evening, as Emery sat on the porch with his grandmother, sipping warm cider and watching the last sliver of sunlight dip behind the hills, he noticed something glowing in the old woodpile beside the cottage. He reached in and pulled out a small lantern made of iron and glass, with a single unlit candle inside and a star etched into its base. "Where did this come from?" he asked. His grandmother smiled knowingly. "Your grandfather used to say it would only light when someone who had seen their own heart returned home." Emery gently struck a match and lit the candle. Immediately, the flame blazed with a cool blue light, not hot, but comforting, like moonlight wrapped in wool. The lantern lifted slightly in his hand, tugging upward. He tied it to the porch beam, and it floated in place like a tethered star, casting soft light across the garden. "You've made your own compass now," Grandma whispered, "and it shines for others too." That night, children walking home late saw the light and smiled. Wanderers paused on the road and breathed easier. The world felt a little softer, a little safer, and Emery dreamed of starlight singing lullabies in the dark. One early morning near the end of summer, Emery was woken by a hush deeper than sleep, a quiet so complete it felt like the world was holding its breath. He stepped outside to find the entire village of Maplemere walking barefoot and smiling silently, candles in their hands, all heading toward the square. "It's the festival of listening," his grandmother whispered, handing him a candle of his own. "We do it once a year in honor of the moments that speak without words." The whole town gathered beneath the old elm tree. No one spoke. There was no music, no ceremony, just the rustle of leaves, the flicker of flames, and the feeling, warm and wide, that everything sacred was already here. Emery looked around and saw children leaning on parents' shoulders, neighbors sharing quiet nods, the baker handing out warm rolls with a smile, and the blacksmith lighting a candle for her lost brother. It was beautiful in its silence. Emery sat beneath the tree and lit his candle from the flame of the star lantern he had brought from home. As he did, the silence spoke to him. It told him that not all journeys happen with feet or maps. Some happen in stillness. Some are heard only by the heart. A week after the festival of listening, Emery found himself drawn to a quiet hill on the edge of Maplemere, where a broken old windmill stood guard over the fields. The sails had long since stopped turning, and ivy clung to the stones like stories waiting to be told. As he approached, the wind picked up, not wild but thoughtful. It tugged gently at his sleeves, inviting him closer. The door creaked open on its own. Inside, the walls were lined with faded scrolls and shelves full of dusty feathers, each labeled with a name and a date. The wind here wasn't just air. It carried whispers, fragments of conversations long gone. Emery stood very still, listening. Among the murmurs, he heard his own voice from weeks ago saying, "I'm doing my best." A gust stirred the largest feather on the highest shelf. It drifted down into his hands. On it were the words, "For those who carry kindness forward." He tucked the feather into his satchel and stepped out, the sails turning slowly behind him, stirred once more by the breath of memory. One crisp morning, the compass, though quiet, began to glow faintly again. It pointed toward a hidden grove Emery had never noticed before, nestled at the edge of the forest. The trees there were tall and smooth, their bark shimmering with a soft silver hue. The apples they bore glowed like tiny moons, and the air smelled of cinnamon and snow. A gentle voice greeted him. To taste one is to remember joy. He plucked an apple and took a bite. Immediately, he was wrapped in memories of laughter, kite flying with his parents, warm hands holding his as he crossed creeks, and the quiet comfort of Grandma's stories by firelight. Each tree held memories not only from his life, but from others in the village. A tree for every soul. He picked a second apple and placed it in his satchel. For Grandma, he thought. Sometimes the sweetest stories grow from the simplest roots. Back in Maplemere, Emery visited an old clock shop that had been closed for years. But that day, as he passed by, The door stood open, and the clocks inside ticked in perfect harmony. A kind-eyed man with silver spectacles greeted him. "Ah, Emery, I've been expecting you." Emery blinked. "But how?" The man smiled. "Time has a way of remembering those who travel well." He led Emery to a grand clock in the back, its face shaped like the moon and stars. "This one doesn't tell time," the watchmaker said. "It keeps moments. Place your hand here." When Emery did, the gears turned, and the clock projected a glowing image, him beneath the elm during the festival, a moment of deep peace. "It's yours," the man said. "Carry it with you for when the world gets noisy." That night, Emery dreamed of a train made of velvet and steam, waiting at a platform of stardust. He boarded without hesitation. Each car held something different, a library of unsaid goodbyes, a garden of what could have been, a music room of almosts. In the final car sat people from his journey: the glass owl, the white fox, the misty figure from the bridge. They nodded in welcome. "You've traveled far," they said. "Where will you go next?" Emery looked out the window and saw all of Maple floating beneath a sky full of fireflies. "Home," he said, "but I'll always be ready to return." They handed him a velvet ticket. "Then this ride is yours whenever you dream." The next morning, Emery found a small box on his windowsill. Inside was a candle, slender, white, and already lit, but no wax dripped, and the wick never shortened. A note beside it read, "For the nights that feel too long." That evening, he placed it beside his bed. The flame flickered with colors that pulsed like a lullaby: soft blue, warm gold, dusky rose. It didn't speak, but it comforted. It reminded Emery that the dark is not empty. It's simply a place waiting for light. He closed his eyes, the candle glowing beside him, and in sleep he dreamed of meadows and whispers, clocks and feathers, stars and velvet tracks. The journey was never really over. It simply became part of him. Night had settled over Maplemere like a thick velvet curtain stitched with silver stars in the hush of crickets in the hedgerows. Emery sat quietly on the little bench by the ivy-covered cottage, the compass of whither wind resting in his lap, still, silent, and at last at peace. He watched the warm glow flicker from the attic window above, where the flame still danced inside the old jar. It no longer burned with urgency, but with comfort, like a candle lit to guide someone safely home. His grandmother came and sat beside him, a knitted shawl over her shoulders, a mug of chamomile tea warm in her hands. She didn't speak for a long while. She just smiled at him in the way only someone who truly knows you can. "You've changed," she said softly. "I feel it," Emery replied, fingers brushing the cool brass of the compass. "Like I understand things now, about myself, about where I belong." The old woman nodded. "That's what adventures are for. They don't always take you far away. Sometimes they just take you deeper inside." From his satchel, Emery pulled out the blue mountain flower, now pressed between pages of an old book. The crystal feather was set in a small wooden frame hanging by the window. The flame had a home, and the story seed, well, it had grown. Out back near the garden gate, a young sapling now reached toward the sky. Its leaves shimmered faintly in the moonlight, whispering softly as if remembering distant clouds, floating cities, and talking trees. "I think the compass knew this was the end," Emery whispered. His grandmother smiled again. "Or maybe it's the beginning of a different kind of journey." They sat together in silence, the kind of silence that holds all the warmth of old stories and soft goodbyes. The wind carried the scent of lavender and warm muffins. Somewhere in the distance, the owl from the pond hooted gently, a final good night. Emery looked up at the stars. He no longer needed to ask them questions, and in the stillness of that moment, with the rain just starting to patter again against the leaves and roof, Emery closed his eyes and let out a long, quiet breath. He had wandered far and wide, through forests and clouds, echoes and dreams, and found, in the end, what he needed most: home. Good night, little dreamer. Let Grandpa's words wrap around you like a warm blanket. The journey is done for now. Rest easy. And when you wake, remember, the compass is always there, just waiting to turn again.